Hey there, my fellow artists. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. Hello, I'm a fellow artist. My name is Carrie. In today's video, I want to talk to you a little bit about how to kind of start telling a story or stories with your artwork. Specifically with painting, because I'm a painter. So the examples I'm going to show you today and talk to you about are going to be with some of my paintings, but of course you can do this with any art form, right? Because art is essentially, in my opinion, this is kind of my definition, visual art, right? Visual art is a visual form that kind of evokes emotion, right? Whether we realize that we're kind of getting that emotion right or not. Sometimes, and even if you're not an artist, if you're someone that goes to like an art museum or a gallery and you look at something and you go, I don't get it, right? Sometimes we just go, I don't get it. That is 100% normal and that is completely okay. And I want you guys to know this up front. You don't have to get something out of art every single time. Although, because art is it's a visual art form. I mean, that's the kind of art we're talking about here today. Like with paintings and stuff, paintings, sculptures, ceramics, all those things. It is a visual art form. And when you're looking at art, your brain, I mean, literally, you guys, this is what happens. You look at a piece of art and it processes, you're looking at something, comes through your eyes, you're processing it in your brain. And whether you realize it or not, you're going to get some type of emotional response to seeing that art piece, right? Even if you say, I don't get it, and you're like, I don't know, that in itself is a response. And I'm not trying to turn anybody into an art snob. I know, we all know those people, right? Those people. Sorry, I mean, sometimes I'm that person too, where I see something and I absolutely fall in love with it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love how they did this, and I can see exactly what this is supposed to mean and what this does and what this, it just all comes together. Oh my gosh, right? You don't have to do that with art, and you can still be a great artist or an art critic or whatever. Everybody has their own style too, and something just might not be up your alley, and that's okay too. But as artists, and I'm assuming you're here because you're an artist too, hopefully a painter like me, right? I want to start talking about how we can start to tell a story or kind of evoke emotion in people that look at our art. And I know this is it's a huge topic, so I'm going to try to break it down and keep it as basic as possible for you guys. And to do this, I'm going to go through a couple examples of my artwork, some that are here on the wall behind me, and some other ones that I just have listed on my Etsy shop right now. And as an artist, it's not like, at least the way I do things, right? I'm not painting something to go, oh, this is going to completely blow the mind of the entire art world, right? I'm not expecting anybody to get something out of my art when I'm making it. That's a really important tip, you guys. Also, when I'm making art, I originally started making art and started painting because I just liked to have pretty things painted to hang on my wall. And sometimes I still do. Sometimes I just paint things because they're simply pretty, right? And other times I paint things because it kind of gives me that emotional connection to it as I'm painting it and as I'm planning the piece. But the bottom line is, you guys, you don't have to paint something to like tell a giant story, right? I mean, that's what this video, I want to talk to you about how you can go about doing that, but you don't always have to. It can be as simple as, well, I was just practicing my watercolor flowers, And sometimes after, I know this is becoming, it's a lot of stuff at once, so maybe take notes or something. Maybe after or during the process of painting something, you're just painting it because you think it's pretty or whatever. And you're not like, oh, there's a story behind it. You're like, no, there's no story to it. I just painted it just because. But then after you're done with it, you can look as a viewer at your own artwork and then start to say, oh, I think that there is kind of a story to be told with this, and I didn't even realize that yet. And I think that's like something really special as artists, when you can look at your own work and say, oh, I get it now. So I'm going to bring you over here to my laptop now, and we're going to go through just a couple of different pieces that I've done and just kind of give you the backstory of why I painted them, and then kind of how I went about telling a story with them, right? Whether I did it intentionally or, like I just said, I was just painting it because I thought it was pretty. And then later on, I looked back at it as a viewer and I said, you know what? I think I get it. I get my own artwork now. So the first piece we have here, these are actually prints of, I don't have the original anymore. I have a picture of it somewhere, but these are just copies of this portrait, well, not portrait, sorry, this landscape like painting that I did, that I called this Kim's Bridge. And I called it that because this is based on a photo that my sister-in-law Kim took while she was on a honeymoon with my brother. And I believe it was in Costa Rica is where they went, and they found this bridge, and she's a photographer. She's a great photographer. And she took a picture, and the picture looked almost just like this version that I did in paint, of looking down this bridge that seemed to stretch for miles and miles and like forever out into the distance, right? And I choose to share this painting with you guys first because this is the one that, of all the paintings I've ever done, this is the one, it was actually one of the first few I ever did, but this is the one that I've gotten the most comments about and the most praise, I guess you would say. If anybody I show a picture of this painting to, or they saw the original painting before I sold it, that this is the one that everyone was like, wow, okay. So let's break it down. Originally, when I was painting this piece, I was not, this is, like I said, one of the first few pieces I did. I was a beginner at the time. I wasn't looking to evoke any type of emotion or, you know, actually tell some type of story with this piece. I was just painting it because it was a pretty picture that my sister-in-law took, and I asked her if I could paint it, and she said sure. That is my story of the picture. However, over time, and now that it's been a while since I painted it, and I can look back at this piece as a viewer, what I see in this painting is a bridge that, like I said, it goes on and on forever and ever. And if we think of that as like a storyline, right? A storyline. I can look at this and now I say, this is kind of like representing the bridge, like bridges that we might take that just seem to go on forever and ever. But they're still, like, it's still beautiful because it's, I mean, this is a really pretty picture. And it's like that long journey that you might have to take, but it's still a beautiful journey, right? And now I know that's pretty deep, but that's just my interpretation as a viewer looking at this piece now. Now that it's been a while and I can look back at it, not as the artist that painted it, but as a viewer just that happens to look at this beautiful painting. Now, your interpretation of this picture, you might have just heard what I said and go, girl, what? And that's okay too. Like I said, you don't have to get everything, right? You don't have to get it or anything. And you might still, like I was when I painted this, you might just be like, well, it's just a really pretty picture. Like, yeah, I could hang that on my kitchen wall and it would look really nice. And that's okay too, right? Or you might be in the other ballpark of like, you're looking at this and you might have come up with like a completely different interpretation of it, right? Maybe this is, you can see that this is going through like the rainforest or the jungle, and maybe you took a similar vacation. Maybe you've been to Costa Rica. Maybe you're like, when I mentioned that this is from Costa Rica, you're like, oh yeah, I went there on vacation. I had so many great memories. Or maybe you went someplace else where you saw a bridge like this in person. It didn't have to be Costa Rica. And this is like evoking, it's like bringing up those memories for you, right? Reintroducing those memories to you as you're looking at it. And that's evoking emotion too, right? Now, I do want to go and look at least one or two more of my pictures before I start talking to you kind of about how you can start, if you really do want to, start telling stories with your artwork, with your own artwork. So here is another painting, and I'm pretty sure I talked to you guys about this one in my Etsy shop tour video that I did not that long ago. This is, again, another painting I did based on a photo that my sister-in-law took. I don't know if she took this one when she was in Costa Rica too. She might have, I'm not sure. But this is one I wanted to really show you because this is one that I did think about the story behind it as I was painting it. Right, I was painting it partly because it was pretty, but I also really did like the photograph. I think I cropped the original photograph to do my version in paint, but I chose to do this design because it looks as if this like beautiful, beautiful flower is just growing from like these lava rocks that are just like hard as rocks, right? It's like solid concrete ground, and yet this beautiful flower found a way to like poke through and come up to the surface and come up and like bloom, right? And I think that's pretty self-explanatory as like a story in itself. It's like this piece is representing that like diamond in the rough situation, right? That I even called the piece Rocky Growth because I was like, this flower is like, it's got a rocky growth going for it. It's literally coming through the rocks, and it might have had a hard time blooming that way, but it got there, right? It got through all the hard stuff, and it finally got to the point where it was able to bloom. So of course that can be like a metaphor for like yourself as a person, or just, you know, someone, if you know someone who has gone through like a really hard time, but has still found the way to break through and like bloom at the end. That's kind of what I wanted this piece to represent. And I was thinking that, like, I was thinking actively about that as I was painting it. Because again, I based this on a photograph, and I did change the photograph a little bit in my painting and stuff, but I wanted it to really seem like it's telling the story of this flower just like blooming out of nowhere. Like somewhere where you wouldn't expect it, right? That's another part of the story. Somewhere where you wouldn't even expect it. Now, again, you as a viewer, you can look at this painting and you're free to interpret it any way you want. As an artist, that's something that I really like too, is that I like my viewers to make their own interpretations of all of my pieces. Sure, that's the story that I gave this piece, and, you know, with the title Rocky Growth and everything, but you might still come up with a story or a storyline that's completely different, and that's okay. Or you might look at it and you might say, I don't get it. And that's okay too, right? Now, a little bit aside from this, a little bit, now that we've gone about the story of the painting and everything, I will say, and I did mention this on that Etsy shop tour video too, in real life, in reality, this flower was not growing from the rocks. I'm sorry, I had to break down the fourth wall there, but it actually was not. I questioned my sister-in-law on this. I said, was that flower really growing there, or did you just put it there and make it look like it was? And she goes, oh no, somebody else put it there, and I took the picture. Okay. The flower was not, in reality, in the actual scene, in real life, it was not really growing. But in the painting, it looks like it is, and that's the point that I would like viewers to get. Now, for the last piece that I want to show you guys, it's still a painting, but this is one of my 3D paintings that I did with resin layers. So it's not a flat painting, it is a 3D painting. That, again, I talked about these types of pieces on that Etsy shop tour video, that if you want to learn more about how they're made and stuff, you can check that out. But this is a piece that I made based on a butterfly, and I used a couple of different reference photos, I think, of just different blue butterflies just to get this going. Now, when you look at this piece, and I'll back it up again so you can just kind of see it in perspective here. It looks like a butterfly in a box, essentially, with like a shadow box is what it's supposed to kind of look like. I know it's kind of hard to see, unless you do see it like in real life, but here I can show you the video so that you can kind of start to see, you know, that it's supposed to essentially look like a butterfly in a shadow box, except instead of using a real butterfly, I painted it because that is better for the health of the butterflies. So when you look at a piece like this, and here's just a close-up of, you can see that it's definitely painted there. But I'll go back to, I think this is kind of the best view of it. When you look at a piece like this, you might just see a pretty butterfly in a shadow box, right? And you're like, oh, it's just pretty. Or you might say, I don't get it. I don't see any story here at all. But it's pretty, right? Now, back to what I said, like, you don't always have to come up with a story as you're making a piece, right? You don't have to. You're not obligated. You're not under any signed contract. You can just make a piece just because you simply want to, just because you want to practice something, just because you think it's pretty, etc., etc. You don't have to have a reason at all, and you don't have to have a storyline to it. But maybe later on, after you've done the piece, like a couple of months later to a year, a couple years later even, you can look back at your own pieces and you might start to see, I guess there could be a story in this. I guess there could be, right? Like I said with the bridge. Because with this piece, and I did mention this in my Etsy shop tour video again, I had an aunt who was very, very close with me, and she as of right now, recently passed away. When I made this piece, she was still with us, and after she had passed away, we had gotten flowers at her funeral, and there were little tags on it, and I went to, put the flowers, I dried them out, and then I put them in my room. And I didn't realize, but the tag on the flowers was in the shape of a butterfly. And then on what would have been her next birthday following her funeral, we held a memorial brunch, and the theme was butterflies. So, and I think there was even like some type of lantern or something that someone had gifted us after her funeral, like as a memorial gift, and it had a picture of a butterfly on that as well. So when you get 3 things that associates a person with a butterfly, now every time that I see butterflies or I paint butterflies, I think of butterflies, I think of my aunt, that I do miss her very much. But anyway, so you can see that this piece is a little bit emotional for me now. Looking back, even though I made this quite a while ago, now again, looking as a viewer, looking back on it, now that it's been some time since I made the piece, butterflies mean something different to me now. So now it's every time I see a butterfly, it's evoking that emotion and that connection with that person, my aunt, with me. And it just brings back a lot of nice memories, right? But again, this goes back to, like I said, like with the bridge one, that like if you had taken a vacation, that you had seen like a similar scene, or you had been like in the rainforest, or you saw a bridge similar to this one, that this piece might evoke, it might bring back those memories for you. And that's another way to tell a story with your art. You don't mean to as the artist, but you're giving a way for people, your viewers, that they might see your piece and it might remind them of something else. Positive, hopefully, very positive, fond memories. Now, with any of these pieces or any painting you want to do, if you want to evoke a story with your pieces, number 1, don't sacrifice the quality of the piece just for the sake of telling a story, right? You still need to make a really high quality piece. Don't try to change too much, alter too much things. Sometimes simpler is better, right? Like, look at this picture. You guys, it's just a simple picture of just a flower and some rocks. That's all it is, right? But it does have the capability of telling such a great story. Now, along with that, use your good painting techniques, especially if you're doing art with painting. Painting is a pretty technical art form. Of course, there are different techniques you can use, different methods of painting, different types of paint. You can use acrylic paint, oil, watercolor, etc. But use really good technique so that your story can shine through, right? Don't just try to make like a mess on canvas and then call it a day and say, this is supposed to mean such and such, it's supposed to represent this part of the world and evoke this sort of meaning of life. And no, right? You still need to really focus on the quality and keep up really good painting techniques. Another thing that you should pay attention to when you want to tell the story is composition. The composition of your piece can really affect how you tell that story of it a lot. And what I mean by composition is one of the elements of art, which I do have a short elements of art workshop kind of class here on my channel that's free for you to check out as well. But composition is how things are arranged in your pieces, right? And in paintings, specifically in the picture that you're painting, right? So looking at this piece here, the composition, I could have changed things. I could have put the flower here directly in the middle, and that might have changed things a little bit. There might have been maybe more focus on the flower, maybe less focus on the flower, because sometimes it's not always super visually attractive to put things directly in the center. Sometimes it's best to leave it off center a little bit to keep things a little bit more visually appealing. And let's take a look back at like this bridge picture. The composition makes a huge difference here because this is a perspective painting, right? Perspective drawings and paintings always use a focal point, a very distinct focal point in their composition. It doesn't have to be the center of the page or whatever, but in this picture specifically, I did put the focal point pretty much. It's a little bit above center, so it's not right in the center. A little bit off center again, just to keep that a little bit visually appealing. But see how things might have been different if I would have put this focal point here, like over here, right? If I would have really put it off center, would it have evoked the same emotion? Would it have told the same story? I don't know that it would, because then it wouldn't seem like the bridge is stretching for miles and miles straight ahead of us. It would be like the bridge is stretching for miles slightly this way, not straight ahead from us, right diagonally from us. So I think it is important that this focal point was along the center plane, again, not in the very, very center, but a little bit above the center line. And I did do that on purpose when I made this painting because the original photo was a little bit off center. It was a little bit over here. So I did crop the picture and paint it directly as close to center as I could, you know. So pay attention to your composition, and those are my tips on how to kind of tell and evoke a story with your paintings. Now, I know this was a lot of information in this video, you guys, so if you need to go back, rewatch things, take notes, please do. But like I said, you don't have to try to create a story with your paintings. It's not required by any means. Sometimes it happens by accident. A lot of times it happens by accident, right? Because you might make something that you make just because you think it's pretty, and then someone else might see it, like my butterflies. Someone else like me might see it if you just paint a butterfly because you think butterflies are pretty, and then someone else looks at it like I look at it, and it reminds me of so many memories of somebody who was very dear to me. So sometimes stories just sort of happen without you meaning them to happen. So I really hope this video was helpful for you guys. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about painting, specifically about painting techniques and stuff, please check out my Canvas Academy learning platform, which is chock full of courses and classes and tips and tricks and so many resources for you to learn how to paint and how to paint using different techniques, different methods, and learning about the basics, like again, the elements of art and composition, all the things that you should know to become the best artist that you can be. So I hope to paint with you all, hopefully, at some point. But until then, later, my fellow artists.